All right, 1 hour away. The Chiefs are going to unveil their stadium plans and upgrades for Arrowhead as we march towards April 2nd. That is when you're going to go to the polls to decide whether or not the Chiefs and the Royals should continue with a 3/8 cent sales tax in this town to, in part, move the Royals out of Kauffman Stadium to their Crossroads location where they now say they want to go, and to help the Chiefs upgrade Arrowhead Stadium. Preston Smith, former candidate for Jackson County Executive, he had a study that he put together that I saw on Tony's Kansas City. And in this study, he noted how crime 1 mile from the proposed site is nearly 100 times worse than at the current stadiums. In 2023, there were a total of 77 separate crimes reported at Arrowhead and Kauffman Stadium. But in the 1 mile from the proposed stadium site downtown, there were 6,882 separate crimes reported. Here's another one. 7 stolen autos from the Kauffman complex during 2023, compared to 1,400 stolen autos within 1 mile from the proposed stadium. Preston Smith is here. He's joining us on KCMO. Preston, good morning. What got you digging on these numbers, and how surprised were you by these?
I tell you, Pete, I just felt like the information needed to be put out there. I didn't see any of the other local media doing that kind of work. It's pretty basic. Just pull the data down from the Kansas City Police Department, do some little bit of analysis, and there it is, right in front of you. So, no, the data was not out there. I thought it was time to come forward with it, and just look and see what's there. And you can see, it's astounding. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe it was that big.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a big number. So is that a 1 mile radius around the stadium site?
Yeah, that would be a mile around it, and that just pulls all the crime that happened. But the thing is, Pete, a lot of parking spots that the Royals have talked about are almost 2 miles away that they want people to park at. So if you start looking at crime that you have to walk 2 miles to get to the stadium, you really are taking your life in your very own hands. This is horrible.
Wow. Okay. So what do you think? I mean, I don't know if you've officially been involved with any of the organizations that are against this, kind of where you're at. Are you just out of curiosity working on behalf of any of these groups, or are you just doing this as an independent citizen?
Well, for the last year, I've helped people fight their taxes here in Jackson County, and we've just morphed that group into fighting this tax. We fought the tax back in November, the sales tax, and we were quite successful with that. We're going to fight this one, too, here in eastern Jackson County. I have a couple of Facebook groups that reach about 10,000 people. I've got an email list that hits about that many. So, between those two, we've got a little bit of a network that we're ready to go social media and try to take this thing down in 5 weeks.
I'm intrigued by the fact that, small C conservatives, low tax folks who are against this, or many of them, I would say, are against these stadium plans for the Royals, could end up with uber progressive folks in both opposing the stadium downtown for very different reasons. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, you got the progressive people that don't like to support the fat cats and let the rich get richer. You've got people like me that I opposed this back in 2006 the first time. I was one of the few people that came forward and went on the TV stations and fought this. And in 2006, it passed 53 to 47. And it pretty much me and a handful of folks fought it then. So we fought it on the grounds that it's a private business, just like the Show Me Institute guy said, private business, they ought to fund their own. I'm still believing that. But right now, people in Jackson County have had enough paying taxes. We've been taxed to death. 2019, 2023, we're the highest tax county in the Midwest. And I think it's going to go down on those grounds.
So you feel like right now, I mean, I said earlier on the show, I would say there's an 80% chance that this thing passes. Not that it'll pass with 80%, but I think there's a 4 in 5 chance this thing passes because I believe the Chiefs are going to pull this thing across the finish line. You don't buy that right now as someone who went through this 18 years ago.
Pete, I've been tracking politics for over 40 years, and every single time when you've got a controversial issue and you've got one side that really pushes hard with PR, TV commercials, lots of advertising, the only thing that does is encourage your no vote to get out. And I'm convinced that no votes, every time they see one of those commercials, is going to remind them, I've got to vote for that. So I tell you what, I am so glad the Royals are spending a lot of TV ad time for this. I hope they spend a lot more.
Preston Smith, former Jackson County executive candidate, data analyst on KCMO Talk Radio. He put out a study yesterday that just shows the stark difference in crime committed out at the Truman Sports Complex compared to the 1 mile radius around where the Royals want to build. You say that very confidently. So what makes you think this is different from 2006 when you didn't have teams that had recently won Super Bowls and World Series and it still passed? Why do you feel like this moment in time is different than 18 years ago?
Well, because we're talking the fundamental issue of crime. And, Pete, you didn't mention this, but 1 mile from the new stadium, they had 12 murders, 25 rapes, and 70 instances of armed robbery. I mean, that does not happen in the current Kaufman when you're going out to see a ball game with your family. And there is no way in the world I'm going to allow my wife and my daughter to go to a game at night at that downtown stadium. And I've had people ask me on the campaign trail when I was running for county executive, how are you going to back this? What would you say to the Royals if you're across the negotiating table with them? And I tell them, you need to be grateful, first of all, for the way people in Jackson County have backed you for all these years. And you need to show a little bit of appreciation. But if you guys want to leave town, then go. And I'd say that today, too, if I was sitting in that office right now.
I'm looking at your map, by the way, of the mile radius around. And, listen, I'm just sitting here looking at the data and saying, okay, a lot of the crime, though, as you rightfully note and you fairly note in your presentation, is really about a mile out from the stadium in neighborhoods that have been dangerous in Kansas City for a very long time. If you're within maybe a quarter to a half mile, that crime is drastically lower. So are you just expecting that people are going to be parking in those parts of town, or is this also maybe something that should be taken into consideration, that within that quarter mile, half mile radius, it's much lower?
No, Pete, there's no safe zone, buddy. I mean, that crime is consistent across the entire 1 mile. I mean, it is consistent. I mean, go from even feet away from where they wanted to put this stadium, you probably have 50 incidents of crimes reported. So, no, there's no safe zone down there. It's consistent across that full mile.
What I will say, though, and listen, the data is the data. You laid it out there, and you're right. No one else in town has done this, so good on you for doing that. When you look at where this goes going forward, the Royals pitch, would you like to see the Royals be a little more out there in the media? Because they're not. It seems like they're going to let the money do the talking, and Jeff Rowe from Axiom Strategies is apparently the guy who's going to do a lot of this behind the scenes.
Well, I've said this publicly. Sherman is probably the stupidest rich guy that I've ever seen that did not inherit his money. The way they've handled this entire process through this whole thing has been ridiculous. And to have Axiom involved in it, too, is just it's clumsy. They've done nothing right about this entire process. And I have no confidence at all that even if they got it approved, they'd build this correctly. I don't have any confidence at all in this group or what they're doing.
All right. Preston Smith, thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Pete.